Hello, Ed Strachar here with Healing Genius and Reading Genius, along with my good friend and absolute master who has just completed the world's toughest row, 50 days at sea in a 7-meter boat across the Atlantic Ocean, 3,000 miles. He's one of the most profound speakers I have ever heard. He's a master of human psychology. He's a serial entrepreneur. And he's a best-selling author, The Inside Track. Peter, nice to have you here.
Ed, what a real pleasure. And I'm so thrilled you got to come out here into the beautiful island of Antigua. It was a great surprise, and I'm just thrilled we get to do this conversation for our audience.
The powerful soul you have and the determination to do what you just did, rowing across the ocean. What made you do this? What inspired you?
You really have to have a big why for something that large.
Yeah.
And what I learned many years ago is that if your why is about you, it's always too small. Mm-hmm. And there was actually two primary reasons. One was a little selfish. The smallest reason was really, as you said, I teach self-mastery. I teach mental mindset, mental mastery. There's a lot of people today that are suffering from not having the tools to be able to deal with their own adversity. And if I'm teaching at that level, I have to know in my own soul that I'm still qualified to teach at that level. And as we know, theory doesn't cover the price of admission to the high levels of greatness.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes you just got to go out and reprove to yourself that you're still qualified to be able to teach. Otherwise, I have no right to be able to share my work with other people. So part of that, the smaller reason was, where am I on my own totem pole of still being able to have what it takes to practice what I preach?
Edison said genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Tell us about the perspiration of rowing across the ocean. I mean, how hungry did you get? How lonely did you get? I mean, it was a 2-man boat, but you still, I just kept thinking of you. He told me he was going several months before. The thought of those big waves raining at night in the Atlantic Ocean, your partner is asleep. What are you thinking?
So something like this, you go through the entire gamut of human emotions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the exhilaration of the start. There's the balance with the uncertainty. I mean, there's never been a year of this event where all boats have finished. There is no certainty that that's going to happen. And that became very apparent after the first 4 or 5 days, because we were told that we should normally leave and depart on the 12th of December, which is symbolic. It's when Christopher Columbus left from the same place to go discover the New World. And the second time he did the crossing, he landed in Antigua, which is why we do that. 3 days before, they said, you're not going on the 12th. There's a weather system coming in that looks like it's going to be too dangerous to go on the 12th. So we're going to leave you a day early, and you have to get south. And their quote was, we will never send you out when it's dangerous, but that doesn't mean to say we won't send you out when it's difficult. It's going to be difficult, but head south. And we took that to heart, and we rode our ass off south for the first 3-4 days. And then the weather system hit. That night, when the waves started building, as the sun was setting, you could see the size of the waves. The tallest waves were about 11 meters.
35 feet.
35 feet. And we are looking up at these walls of water that are rising in front of us. Yeah, there's no sail, there's no engine, there's you and oars. In fact, you're not even allowed by race rules to hold up a t-shirt to dry, because that's classed as wind power, and everything's got to be arms and oars for the entire 3,000 miles across there. And we're sitting there looking up, and I'm not a rower. We don't have experience. We don't have seamanship. Yes, of course, we've had to go through instructions and exams and qualifications, but it's minimal. Just so that you have the bare level of safety to try to get across. Very similar to life. You can't prepare 100% for the kind of uncertainty that's coming. If you've never experienced a 35-foot wave, you can't prepare for a 35-foot wave.
35-foot wave, think of a 4-story building, and they're coming at you repeatedly. I mean, that's...
Every 4 seconds at one point.
Every 4 seconds. So you're going up and down and up and down. I mean, and you're rowing 2, 3, 4 miles an hour?
That would have been good. Yeah,
okay.
2 to 2.5 knots is probably an average on a good day. If you've got 3 things that conspire either in your favor or against you. One is the wind. That's the most primary one. Right? If the wind is behind you, great. If it's against you, unlucky.
Yeah.
Then you've got the current. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then you've got the direction of the waves. Yeah, the swell.
Right.
You know? So the wind and the waves, if they're at odds, you have what we call white caps. If it gets higher, they're called white horses, where it's a very choppy sea. And if the current then switches every 6 hours, all of a sudden, the wind's going one way and you're going north, but the current's dragging you south. And then the wind is just changing direction. It's variable. You've got to navigate all of that. It's trial by fire. It's learning on the job. It's a baptism of
There's no way to test for that. There's no way to emulate that. Now, don't you have to sail right into the waves perpendicular?
Well, again, you use the word sail. Yeah, there is no sail. One of the things is if you get what we call pinned by the wind.
Okay.
Because the boat has obviously a long surface area and a short surface area. And the wind is constantly trying to turn you so that the long surface area is flat to the wind. If that happens, you get pinned. Trying to use your oars to try to get back round is a Herculean effort to try to get the wind then to push you. It's just tough. But again, you can't really prepare for that. And that first night of big sea, where we're looking up at hundreds of tons of water and not knowing if the boat is going to survive, not knowing if you're going to get rolled or capsized or flipped. And that level of uncertainty, this is real.
Yeah.
It's like...
And there's no rescue boat.
No.
There's no following boat. There's no lifeguards. There's no seaplane.
At any one point during there's 30 odd boats in the fleet that go in and a lot of fours, which is 2 people rowing at any one time. So they get across quicker.
Okay.
I'm in the pairs. So there's one person rowing at all times.
And you all launch at the same time?
Yes.
And at what point do you not see anyone?
6 hours. Because you all have different ideas on what route to take.
And you choose that route?
We had a weather router, so we paid for a weather expert that would then radio us, hey, aim south or aim for this waypoint, or it looks at, and they're all looking at 4 or 5 different models from different Met systems. Weather is unpredictable. Weather is full of uncertainty. And this particular year, I mean, luck of the draw, I guess.
But this is real old school, like Columbus. I mean, he had to read the stars, and
yeah, you have a lot of respect for the for the guys that back in the day, they didn't have access to 15 different like computerized weather models and predictions. But the team that actually got across the fastest was a 5-man team called Row for Camps. They did amazingly well, and when they got in, there was the gentleman in that team had actually rowed this event 3 times and he actually won twice. The second time he'd won. He'd also sailed the Atlantic 12 times in a sailboat. And he said on the finish line that never in his 12 sailings or previous 2 rowings had he ever encountered weather like this particular event.
Really?
Yeah, it was just brutal. And the race organizers sort of said at the end, it says, well, you started off and you had bad weather. And that was replaced by worse weather, which then managed to get back to bad weather. And it kind of went downhill from there.
And I remember in what he was documenting this on social media, so I would see these film clips. And the way you put it, well, the body's fighting back. Normally we would get sore, if we were doing a hard workout. And you said, well, the body is complaining, but we keep on going. Explain that a little bit more.
Sure. Now, just to set the scene a little so people understand the severity of the physical challenge. You're rowing 2 hours on and 2 hours off. So
24/7.
24/7?
Yeah.
For the entire, it took us 49 days.
Right.
So the first thing you're dealing with is sleep deprivation. And exhaustion. People say, how do you prepare for the sleep debt? You can't. If you started 2 days before trying to get into routine, you're just going to start tired.
Right.
Right? There's no way to prep for it. So you start off, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. And in the daytime, certainly after a week or 2, the further south you go, it's just too hot. You're crossing the equator. The cabins in the daytime are too hot to be in. It's like a sauna. And you can't leave the cabin door open. Right? You cannot leave the door open because if a wave comes, which they often did, and you get slammed, right? Imagine the boat here. Slamming means like you go full 90 degrees.
Wow.
Right? It's not a capsize. A capsize is if you go all the way around.
Sure.
But if you get slammed, which we did often, if your cabin door is open and your cabin fills with water, if it's the stern cabin where all your electronics are, you're done. Right? You've got no navigation, equipment, power, nothing. You'd be shorted out. If it's the bow cabin, if the boat turns over, in its current design, it's self-righting.
And so these cabins are sealed units with the door closed?
Sealed, sealed, watertight, airtight. The routine for safety. And there's 2 absolute non-negotiables, which is literally life or death. The first is clipping on. You have to be, there's a harness on deck. And when I open my cabin window to come out, my cabin door, which is about a hatch this size, I have to crawl through. I reach forward, I grab my harness, and I clip onto my safety belt. So the second I'm on deck, I'm attached to the boat.
Right.
If I get thrown overboard,
Sure.
it can happen very easy, especially if you get slammed. If I'm not clipped on, people say, oh, just swim back to the boat. The wind that is pretty prevalent and the nature of the current will move the boat, because it's a larger surface area, faster than you can swim. If you go overboard, there's instant separation between you and the boat. You can swim as hard as you can, and your friend on board, if they're lucky enough to be on board and see this happen, could try to stall or stop or slow the boat down. You can't. You're going to watch your friend disappear over the horizon. There is no getting back.
Eek.
There's no like, oh, even if it's a calm sea, the current underneath is probably moving you at 1.5 knots. Well, you're struggling to swim at 1.5 knots. So you're clipped on at all times. That is non-negotiable. You go over, you're gone.
Right.
There is a throw bag on board, which contains a loop you hold on to and a rope that's 30 meters. And you can throw it. We practiced on land, throwing that bag. And if your friend goes over, you've probably got 5 seconds to react to get the throw bag to throw him a line that you hold on to. But he's also in big waves. If you can't see that where the rope is, because you lose sight of the boat every 4 seconds. If he doesn't make that rope within 3-4 seconds.
Didn't you jump in when it was calm water to get a bath?
Only if you're attached, and you don't do that. You do it to scrape the boat underneath. Every week you'll get barnacles and stuff that clings to the bottom of the boat, and you go under with a scraper.
Right.
Because it slows you down. It's friction. They're robbing you of maybe 1/3 of a knot. Freeloaders. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
But again, if it's in rough sea, that's tough. But I said 2 non-negotiables. One is clipped on at all times. The second is cabin doors shut at all times. They're open when you go out, immediately closed behind you. Which means if you're in there in the daytime, 35 Celsius,
Yeah.
right? It is instant sweating. You're losing minerals. You're losing water.
Right.
It's impossible to sleep. It's too hot. Being on deck, there's not a lot of room, so you can't relax. You can't sleep in the day. So the only sleep you're getting is in those 2-hour off shifts at night. It's not 2 hours. You never get 2 hours. You might get an hour. Why? Because it takes 5 minutes to do your changeover, give your oppo a briefing. What's the sea state? How's the current? Are you fighting a northerly push? Keep your eye on the course over ground. What's happening? You then get in, take off your wet gear if you've got your wet gear on. Try to air the body, especially the backside, which is like, getting just brutal punishment. And then you try to settle down. Bearing in mind, you've just been growing your ass off for 2 hours. You're full of cortisol.
It's like working out really hard and then trying to sleep after.
It's like when people come home from work, even if it's late at night, they need a glass of wine, they need to watch TV, they need to read a book to try to unwind before bed. So the body actually gets that kind of come down. So let's just say we're now at 90 minutes before you're finally sleeping, but then you've got to get up 10 minutes before your shift, so you're early on time. You want to be on time for your shift because it's respectful for your body.
Right.
And then you've got to get your clothes back on and open the door quickly and say, what's the weather like? Get your wet weather gear, shut the door.
Couldn't you negotiate with him and say 3 hours on, 3 hours off so you get a little longer sleep?
The challenge with that is that 2 hours is about the maximum you can build up lactic acid for the 2-hour downtime to clear it. It's also law of diminishing returns, because your 3rd hour, you're going to be slow. Yeah. The first hour, you're pretty fresh. The 2nd hour, you start tailing off. It was a 3rd hour. If your buddy's on for that hour instead of you, you're going to be going faster. All right. So it's law of diminishing returns.
And it's a race.
Well, some people are racing. Mission statement's important in life and everything else. We were very particular. We spent a lot of time discussing the mission statement before we went, and I had it printed out, laminated, and stuck above my cabin pillow, so I would read it all the time. And if there was a discrepancy around decision making, can happen. Even in a marriage, somebody's going to throw the partner off the boat at some point, right? But our mission statement was, we are not racing. I'm not in my 20s, I'm in my 50s. I'm not looking for medals. I don't care how long it takes. What I want to get there is safely, efficiently. I want to enjoy. I spoke to the guy who won the solos, and I was explaining we were uploading social media to inspire other people. Like you say, the videos you saw. He's like, I never used social media. I didn't have time. I need to be on the oars, because he was out to win. He didn't look for dolphins. He didn't care about whales. He was like, how fast can I cook a meal? In fact, forget cooking, I'm going to eat it cold because it saves me time to get back on the... That's not the experience we wanted.
Right.
So there was no race.
Okay.
We'll get there when we get there. If it's position, we're out. We ended up coming third out of 11 pairs.
And it was supposed to be 58 days, and you did it in 49.
It would have been faster, obviously, if the weather hadn't have conspired against us. But we were just plodding on.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission was this: to get across safely, efficiently, and creating magic moments while inspiring others to take on their own row. And that was I said there was 2 whys. The first, selfishly, was about just benchmarking me. Am I still qualified to teach? Otherwise, I've got to hang up my gloves. But the second why was, I want to do this because a lot of people are facing their own row across the Atlantic. Whether that's a traumatic divorce, a business failure, a health challenge, the loss of a loved one. We all have our own rows to row.
Yes.
And if I'm lucky enough to just get the Atlantic, I swap that over a stage 4 diagnosis. I would swap that over a loss of a loved one dying in my arms in a heartbeat. So if I can do this extreme endurance event and use what I'm learning on the job and the tools that I've spent years teaching on how I can maintain my mindset, my resilience, my persistence in the face of tough adversity, try to stay cheerful, try to reframe the adversity, try to deal with some of the major challenges we face that we didn't foresee, then how can you, in your life, borrow from some of that as inspiration? Or I had a message this morning, right, on my phone from a beautiful soul called Paul. And he sent me a message saying, Peter, I have to tell you, I followed your journey and I am so inspired to now live an even bigger life than I was settling for. I hope to never forget the courage and bravery you had and be able to use it in my own life to go out and help inspire others. Now, that makes the journey worth it.
That is wonderful.
You know?
That is wonderful. I mean, I have to, what did you eat? How were you?
Well, this is an interesting topic because in pre-row, for the last 2 years, I've been on the carnivore diet.
Okay.
It suits my body type. I'm a big fan of people online like Dr. Anthony Chafee and Sean Baker and Dr. Ken Berry and a lot of the people that really are debugging the myths around the mainstream attack on red meat and carnivore.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, it's for some people. And I listen to my body and my body gets on well. I get on well with carnivore. So for 2 years, I've been on a pretty good carnivore diet. That posed a challenge at sea. Mm-hmm. We don't have refrigeration. There's no butchers out there. All right? There's no way of carrying 50 days of ribeye and T-bones. For months, I was looking for a solution. I finally found one. One of my medical team that were helping me train for this recommended something called pemmican. I'd never heard of it. Turns out it's a Native American survival food that they used for the explorers. And it's dried beef mixed with beef tallow. So there's no moisture, so it never goes off. Doesn't need any refrigeration for 10 years.
Beef tallow is fat.
Yeah. And I found a couple of companies that would manufacture it for me.
So no one makes it commercially?
Not many places, right? I looked around. Steadfast Provisions in the US, very high quality, organic, grass-fed, and they were so keen. They donated to our charity. They were so keen to help. Little company, Boutique Cowley's Specialty Foods, and they made me a load. So I took a whole ton of pemmican. So I wanted to see if I could be one of the, maybe the first person in the world to row an ocean just on carnivore. Mm-hmm. It lasted 2 weeks until Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, we celebrated with a dried packet of reindeer stew as a bit of a celebration, which had potatoes and it had vegetables and what have you. But it tasted so good. But it threw me out of ketosis. And to get back into ketosis was too much of a hill to climb.
Really?
You're talking probably 2 or 3 days to get the carbs out of the system, to switch the body back, and going through what the marathon runners would call hitting the wall, to get back through the glycogen and the carbs into burning fat. And it was just too hard.
Wow.
So I started substituting. I'd taken some dried meals, some freeze-dried meals with standard stuff. The only thing I wouldn't eat was seed oils. So any dried food packages that we looked at before that contained rapeseed oil, canola oil, commercial sunflower oil, I wouldn't touch. They're very pro-inflammatory in my mind, certainly for my body. And the last thing you need out there in that level of endurance is inflammation.
Right.
So I started supplementing carbohydrates at that point. So I survived the next 4 weeks on sort of a mixture of pemmican and carbs. And you'd need to boil water. We had a jet boil, amazing invention. You'd boil a liter of water in 90 seconds on gas. And then we would put it in
So they had a little gas stove.
little gas stove. Because Lee was on standard rations.
What is standard rations?
Standard in terms of freeze-dried.
And Lee, it's the first time you mentioned his name. Lee was your partner.
Lee was my rowing partner.
And he's a best friend for a long time, right?
We met in the shooting team in the Army Cadets when we were 13 years old. We had an amazing connection since that time. He went and did a full career, 22 years in the British Royal Marine Commandos.
Wow.
He saw active service in multiple conflict zones. He was the last Royal Marine troop to see conflict in Northern Ireland, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. So he was raising money for PTSD for service people. That was our main charity, was Service Dogs UK.
Right.
I'm a dog guy. He's a vet guy. And this charity trains animals to be service dogs for people with PTSD. Beautiful charity out of England. Lee was eating everything. Yeah, he could eat everything.
Everything. I mean, didn't you bring a bag of apples or grapefruits or lemons?
Oranges, chocolate. There was no restriction on whatever he was eating. It was like calories count. You're in calorie deficit from day one.
Right.
Yeah, I lost just under 10 kilos. I went from He-Man to Skeletor in like 50 days. You're not going to be fussy. It's just get your body's craving fuel, get it down your neck. Just eat. Taste became a secondary issue. It's like just eat because your body's just, I need fuel. Yeah, it was tough. Again, the sleep, 2 hours on, 2 hours off with maybe an hour to an hour and 15.
For 50 days.
50 days.
Mind-boggling. Lots of people report when they do these things. They're out in the desert or on the ocean. They see mirages. They see delusions or illusions, hallucinations. Tell us your experience.
Obviously, the sleep depth is a big factor to that. One of the challenges is that it's very hard to tune out. There's so much going on. That may sound strange on a little rowing boat.
Yes, it does.
But the thing that you are constantly focused on while rowing is your navigation. We've got an auto tiller and we're putting in waypoints. We're putting in grid references for where to head next. And that was given to us by the weather routers. Move to this course over ground or move to this waypoint. What you're looking at is 4 categories of information on a split screen, like a square screen. The first is your heading. Let's just say if we're heading west, we go south enough to head west at 270 degrees. That's your heading. Underneath that, you have the distance to your next waypoint. Let's call it 60.3 miles. Next to that, you have your speed. Speed's almost irrelevant in a way because you could be going really fast in the wrong direction.
Yeah, sure.
The most important number, what you're focused on constantly, is what's called course over ground. That is the actual direction the boat is moving. So imagine that here's where you're heading, and here's the boat moving this direction. But the current's moving this way.
Right.
So even if the boat has to probably be here to move this way. Doesn't matter where you're facing. Well, you could be facing this way and still moving this way. So this is course over ground, not direction of travel. So your course over ground is king. If that starts moving in the wrong direction, even if you're facing west, you're going off track. So you are literally glued to your course over ground. Now the thing is, because you're the waves are kind of fishtailing you a bit, and you're in a little boat, so you're moving quite a lot. Your COG number is changing 2 times a second. So you've got a variance. Let's say 270 is my goal.
And could you manipulate that with the oars?
Not
or
really.
what?
You manipulate it with the rudder.
Okay.
Right? Your job is to put power under the rudder, put water under the rudder, let the rudder do the work. But let's just say the course over ground's 270 degrees. You'll probably bounce up to 290 and down to 250.
Right.
So you're saying, okay, are there more 250s on screen than 290s? So I'm probably heading a little more south. Or are there more 290s on screen than 250s? So I'm probably heading a little more north. And it's a guessing game. But it's a constant gluing to that in those 2 hours you're on deck. Otherwise, you zone out or you get so tired you're trying to focus on the wrong things. And your buddy comes out and says, oh, by the way, we're like half a mile off course. And now he's got to correct it on his shift and you feel bad.
Yeah. Right.
So hallucinations, Lee did faint. He was so tired at one point. He fainted, although he had a couple of head injuries, which...
Well, yeah, tell us about that. I saw on some of your posts, which were fantastic, by the way. Lee bangs his head, I guess, in a wave or a storm.
Just to set the frame on that, so again, people can understand. A lot of people set an aspiration to run a marathon. It's quite a goal for a lot of people. It's doable,
Sure.
you can train. And a marathon, if you're a pro, you're going to be doing it in around 3 hours. An Ironman, which is next level up, 14, 15, 16 hours. An ultra marathon, Eco Challenge, Marathon des Sables, 7 days, 10 days. Maybe the toughest sporting event that's televised would be something like the Tour de France, grueling several hours a day for 3 weeks. This is 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24/7 for up to 2 months. Right? There is nothing comparable. More people have been into space than successfully rode the ocean as a pair. There's 10 times the people have climbed Everest than have ever rode the ocean. It is just in a league that's separate. So well, Lee's on the oars. I'm having a little bit of downtime. This is after, I don't know, 3 weeks. I have to go out to use the bathroom now. Again, to set the scene, there is no bathroom. If it's a number 1, it's a pee bottle. If it's a number 2, it's bucket and chuck it. So you put the bucket in deck, and hopefully it's kind of, not too choppy.
Did your partner turn his eyes?
Yeah, there's no airs and graces after the first week, I can promise you.
The kindergarten is coming out of me right now.
So I get out to use the bucket. I put the bag, and it's a little sort of rocky sea. I am, let's just say, mid-bucket. The next minute, this wave slams the boat. I mean, we get full knockdown. I'm slammed against the side, the bucket's in the air, the contents of the bucket's in the air. Like, it's not pretty. It's like, what? And I hear this almighty, like, ah! And I look over, all I see is blood all over the deck. And Lee is like dazed. I'm like, dude, what happened? No response. The boat is listing at 45 degrees, full of water, and it can't drain because the scuppers on this side are already still underwater, so it's not draining. So we are listed at 45 degrees. I have to get over to it because we've both been slammed, so now it's tilted, so it's not self-riding on there. We're at 45 degrees, submerged, a third underwater. So I've had to go throw myself the other side of the boat to try to counterbalance it up so it comes up so the water can drain.
And this is daytime or night?
Daytime. I get my pants back up and I immediately go over to Lee, and he's actually, when the wave came, it slammed his head. We've got oars against the safety rail and it slammed his head against it so hard he got concussion.
And he's out.
He's pretty much out. He's dazed. He doesn't know his name. I've got him over to the side of the boat, leaned up against his cabin. I'm looking for where the blood's coming from. I thought it was his head, but it's not. He's gashed his thumb open. To his credit, he then goes in, probably autopilot, into one of the hatches, gets the first aid kit and goes into his cabin and emerges 5 minutes later with a professionally bandaged thumb. And I'm
That's
thinking
just Marine training.
Marine training. So I'm thinking he's okay. He ain't okay. I get on the sat phone to the safety officer, the duty officer, and I call it in. Lee's had a bang on the head. He looks like it's concussion. Okay, keep us informed in an hour. Let us know how he is. In an hour, he's Sparko in his cabin.
Sparko.
Like just asleep, resting. I get on the phone an hour later, he's asleep. We need to see if he's okay. Okay, I go back, open this cabin. Lee, you okay? I get a little thumbs up like that. I call him back and says, no, we need to hear his voice. I go back, Lee, talk to me. Are you okay? I say, he's not very coherent. They speak with the doctors, give us an hourly update, try to get him to speak. It became very clear within 3-4 hours he ain't getting on the oars anytime soon. They were 50-50 whether to send a recovery boat to take him off the boat. He persevered, he went through it, but it was 3.5 days before he was able to get back on the oars. So I rode solo for 3.5 days.
So in riding solo, were you then 2 hours on, 2 hours off again?
No,
or?
I actually was doing more like 3, 4, 5 hour shifts, an hour or so off. And then at night, I would tie everything down on the boat, stow the oars, right, set the autotiller and try to get 4 or 5 hours sleep. That seemed to be the best.
Okay.
Yeah, bear in mind, there are solos that do this event and they're 3 hours on, 1 hour off and 6 hours at night.
If you didn't have an autotiller or the autotiller malfunctioned, could you have made it?
It's a horrible thought because the answer is yes, but the way you make it is really archaic and horrible. It's called foot steering.
Yeah, so you manually...
So you have the steering lines, but obviously you can't have your friend steering because somebody has to rest and sleep. So you have something on one of your feet, which is a plate you unscrew, which you tie off the steering lines on, and you twist your ankle left and right to try to adjust the rudder.
So you had that as
a really bad backup. If it gets too far over, let's say the rudder's here, the current's moving you, so you have to compensate with 20 degrees off the rudder, so you're kind of crabbing a little against the current, but it keeps you on heading. If you get spun by a wave and the rudder's too far off course and it tries this and it tries that, it'll fail and it'll just go beep, 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 beep and disengage. If that happens, it takes two of you to try to put it back on course, so it does for us. One's got a hand steer back, you've got to unhook the auto tiller, one person's hand steering and the other person's trying to fight against the wind with the oars, usually my job, to try to get us back round.
Were you, I mean, I've got to ask this, were you prepared to die? I mean, this is a life and death situation. I mean, you have backups, you have this radio that you had, but things can go wrong. Things can go really wrong. This is the ocean. Many men have lost their lives at sea. Sometimes, you know, huge battleships have lost their lives at sea just through bad storms. Were you prepared to die?
I have to be 100% transparent and authentic with this with an absolute yes. And this is a conversation I had with my partner, with my students before I left. And I said, listen, yeah, there's always a chance, but obviously probability is higher in something like this.
Sure.
I felt that I would be protected. Here's my philosophy. If you don't have a way to reconcile death, you're going to be afraid to live.
I want you to listen to this. This is super powerful. One of the things that many great men, whether they be spies and they've gotten caught, you know, got hung or shot or in various situations, you cannot be afraid of death.
A lot of people are afraid of death because they think it's the opposite of life. Yeah, to me, you know, death is the opposite of birth. Let's use a favorite metaphor of mine in terms of Star Wars. If I'm here to serve for the greater good, which I feel I am, and there's some clone wars happening on another dimension somewhere, and I'm required to go and help out there because my skill set or energy or whatever would be better put to use for the greater good there, I have to be willing to accept that. There was a time where we had a problem with the rudder. Lee put a GoPro under the boat, and we thought there was something wrapped around it. But the only way to be sure or unwrap it is for somebody to go in, and this is big sea. This is choppy, raging current level. I said, listen, I've got to do it. Somebody's got to do it, and Lee's not. With his concussion and still coming out of that, there's no way. I said, I've got to do it. I went in my cabin. I'm a little emotional talking about it now. And I recorded a video, mainly for my partner, to be fair. And it was a 50-second video. I still have it on my phone. I only recently showed it, so I didn't show it until I got on land. But it was like, hey, listen, I've got to go under the boat. This is a pretty nasty sea, but it's got to be done because there's something wrong with the rudder. And I want you to know that I'm volunteering for this, that this is my decision, that if anything happens and you find this video, that don't blame Lee, don't blame anything else. It was my decision. And I love you, baby. And I recorded that and I left my phone in the cabin. And I put my feet over the side. I put them over the side. They instantly got, like taken. Like I had to hold on because the raging current underneath. And then I get in. I'm holding onto the grab rail, and I'm kind of inching around the back. And I've got a mask on and a snorkel. And I get to the back of the boat, and it's got like a grab rail. And I'm holding on, but my body is like Superman being pulled back.
Wow.
So it's like holding onto the back of an airplane.
Yeah.
And I'm looking under the rudder and I'm looking around and I can't see anything. And I get back on the boat. Okay. The problem was the noise was the rudder was going, and it was that noise that thought something caught around it. So we thought, nothing's wrong with the rudder, it's just a noise. About 30 hours later, in a calmer sea, we suddenly lose the auto tiller. It suddenly malfunctions because it can't keep us on track. I'm like, how do you lose a bearing in a fairly calm sea? We didn't lose the bearing. The rudder snapped clean in half. The wave that slammed us had done something to it, bent it or whatever. Now, this is a carbon fiber solid rod, 6 times stronger than steel. Now, we keep a spare. There's a lot of redundancy built in. Now we've got to change a rudder at sea. And we talk through it, and there's a procedure, and we rehearse, and we're trained, and we changed the rudder in 10 minutes, and we're super happy with it. Problem was, the noise was still there. it turns out that there's a collar that the rudder sits up snugly into. That collar had been ripped out, when the big wave had taken us.
Sure.
So it was causing this, which over time was probably creating a weakness, which at some point then snapped. So what do? I went under, I got the rudder back out, and we realized that there's a collar missing. And one of the key things that I learned on this adventure, you've got to get resourceful. You've got to figure it out. No one's coming to save you. It's a very good metaphor for life.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to look around and say, how do I deal with this? We ended up getting a talcum powder bottle, emptying the talcum powder overside, hacksawing it a collar, getting Gorilla Tape to try to put around and kind of MacGyver it. And that helped, but it was still, the noise was less, but still there. So then we get it out again and we put more tape on, and now it's too much and it won't fit. And so you're finding this happy medium. We're finally happy. That lasted until about 3 days before the end.
3 days before the end.
Before the end. The noise is getting louder, and we're afraid that if we break this, we haven't got a rudder. Lee's like, should we just do one more repair? Belt and braces? Okay. That's when it all went wrong. I went, we know the routine. I go up and I pulled the rudder down, but the collar was so snug, even though there was still a bit of there, it pulled the collar up.
Okay.
So then when I pulled it down, right, and we managed to get the rudder out, we had to kind of redo everything, but we couldn't then fit it back in. So I've gone back on now. The problem is the sea state started picking up, and I'm going underneath with this rudder and it won't fit. The sea state got so bad that the back of the boat's being lifted up 2 feet out of the water and slammed back down.
Wow.
I am holding on with one hand to the grab rail. I've got the rudder with the other, trying to find this little hole to get it up, and it's buoyant, so it doesn't want to go down. And it's getting up, and I'm then having to push it up. It won't fit. I can't let go of this hand, otherwise I'm going to fly back until the rope pins me 10 feet, and I don't know if I've got the strength to pull back. And I'm swallowing seawater, and then I'm trying to get it up, and then it's not fitting. We're getting it back off, and then we're making an adjustment. My arm strength is going. I'm almost trying to can't hold on. It's the closest I've ever come to drowning. My mask is being ripped off. I'm being forced 2 feet under the water every 3-4 seconds, slammed in there. I'm swallowing seawater. I'm trying to get the rudder. I'm trying to hold it put together. And all I hear is Lee says, pull it back out. And I pull it back out. We take it back on decks the third time. How do we get this to work? And we've got to figure it out again. So the fourth time, I don't know what I'm going back into.
Yeah. I
get back under the boat, like that raging sea, and I'm trying to finally get it into the hole, and I'm pushing it up, and boom, it slots in. Oh, and I've got to wiggle it a little bit so that he can get the bolt in the cabin above. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and now I'm holding onto the grab rope, but the water's flipped me over, so I'm twisted underneath, and I'm trying to move the rudder, and then I hit, and I'm screaming, hurry up! But every 2 seconds I'm back under the water, and I can't hear what he's shouting because I can hear a little bit, and then I'm back under the water, right? And it's raging, and then all I hear is pull it back out. I'm like, no, not again. And we pull it back out, and I get it on deck, and it's like, I don't know what's wrong. The bolt's not lining up, and so we remark it, and then I've got to go back under. I'm thinking, this time, please. And I go back under, and I finally get the rudder back up, and I push it up, and it's flush. And I hear this scream, oh no. I'm like, can I come on deck? He's like, no, do not let go of the rudder. Do not let go of the rudder. Now, bear in mind, it's tied on with a rope in his. He says, get the rudder out, bring it back. I'm like, not again. I've got nothing left.
Yeah.
But I pull the rudder out, there's no rope on it. If I let go, it's gone. We're gone. So I get back on deck, and he's holding the top of the rudder, the actual metal sleeve that's epoxied on that had just sheared off.
And if that rudder goes, you got to call for a rescue.
Well, to be fair, I would have tried to figure something out. We'd have got one of the spare oars and tried to lash it to the guide rail to use it as a gondola, I don't know. We get the epoxy out, the emergency repair kit in case we get hit by marlins to put holes in the boat. And we're trying to figure it out, and we epoxy it back on, and this is kind of the last chance. I've got to go back in. Sea's not calmed down. And I go back in, and we get it in, and I push it under, and I'm twisting it for about a minute, and I'm starting to black out a little. And I'm thinking, this is it. We've come this far. We're like 2 days out. all I hear is this massive scream. I don't know if it's a I dropped the bolt or a yes. It turned out it was a yes. Lee's just, oh yes! The bolt clicked in, we tightened it up. I came back on board. We had a rudder for the last 2 days. There's so many things on that last week that could have gone wrong, went wrong, including a second head injury for Lee. I was actually on the phone with Nadia when it happened. I was on the sat phone. And I'm in my cabin and Lee's
Nadia is his partner.
That is my partner. And I was telling her about, just a daily update, what's happening. And all of a sudden I hear this, we got slammed by a wave and my head hits the side of the boat. I thought, yeah, that was a big wave. I'm like, let me just check on Lee. And I went, Lee, you okay? I'm like, Lee, you okay? No response. I'm like, honey, I think Lee's had another bang. And Alicia put the phone and didn't hang up. I reach through, I grab my clip, I clip on, I get on deck, I close the door and she can hear what's going on through the glass. So she heard everything in real time. Lee, same bang on the same side of the head. Wave hit again from starboard side. He's gone. He doesn't know his name. He doesn't know where he's at. He can't answer what day it is. I get him in the cabin. I call it through. This is about a week out. And I thought I was going to have to do the whole rest of the trip at that point. But he came through, but he had a massive headache. And the most troubling thing was his vision. His vision went in his left eye, was blurry, and it never returned. So in the daytime, you've got a horizon. Your gyro's kind of engaged. But at nighttime, it's pitch black, there's no moon, and you can't see where the sea finishes and the sky starts. So he's got no gyro, and he's struggling to see the instruments. So at night, I was doing kind of 3 hours on, an hour, hour 10, hour and a half off, and Lee would do more hours in the day. It's the only way we could bring it home.
Wow. I mean, that's mind-boggling. And you said marlins can pop a hole in the boat?
Every year there are marlin strikes. It's one of the biggest fears for the fleet.
I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, the marlin, whether it thinks it's a shoal of tuna or anything like that, you've got a reflective strip along the bottom of the boat, which could look like a shoal of mackerel.
Right.
But these things are traveling at like 30 kilometers an hour.
And they're big.
We've got a carbon fiber boat, but they said that it doesn't care if it's made of Kevlar, right, bulletproof material. You're not stopping a marlin.
The sword just penetrates right through the boat.
Straight through. It's just part of the game. You can't mitigate it. You can put energy out to try to repel it and hold positive vibes, but marlin strikes are a big thing, and you've got bungs and waterproof tape or patches and what have you. But one boat this year, Invictus, they had 2 marlin strikes, but we never got a marlin strike, thankfully.
Any sharks?
No, and I'm not worried about sharks. Yeah, sharks get a bad rap on Hollywood.
Sure.
I'm not a seal, right? They're not going to eat me. I would free dive with great whites. I was on stage at a TED event with a woman called Ocean Ramsey who free dives with great whites in Hawaii. They're amazing creatures. I'm a great believer of energy. Now, I wouldn't get in if they were chumming the water.
Sure.
Right, different, but I'd have zero fear around that because they're majestic creatures. They're not this man-eating, unprovoked, whatever. One of my biggest fears was there was a story on a few years ago, where one guy's on the oars and the wave comes over and dumps a Portuguese man of war onto his lap. And he was off the oars for about 3 days recovering. But they said after that, he came back like Superman. But yeah, there's so many variables out of there. But jellyfish, shark, we saw dolphins.
I know Peter. He called me through social media, through reference from a friend. And he also used my Reading Genius course back in the 90s. And now I've created great healing energy and I heal people around the planet. And I have a special connection with dolphins. And dolphins have greater intelligence. Dolphins are here to raise the vibration of the planet. And so Peter and I did a healing prayer and alignment with dolphin energies.
In the first 24 hours, we were suddenly surrounded by a pod of 100 dolphins all around us, just playing, jumping out of the water, being you took families and baby dolphins and what have you. It was just this surreal sight. And they were there very, very briefly, just the symbology of that. And then we saw dolphins probably every couple of weeks after that would just show up at certain times. And then we had 2 tuna, yellowfin tuna. And they would be under the boat, and then Lee at night would get his head torch and put it out, and you'd see them, and then they'd see the light, and they go under the boat and go the other side, and you go the other side and see them come out. But yeah, the solitude was something I recommend everybody to have, but it was great to be spending time with yourself. Yeah, it's often said, silence is the music of wisdom.
Right.
And yeah, to the mind that is still, the entire universe surrenders.
Right.
And so I was doing a lot of, we obviously had headphones and playlists, and my most common playlist was my meditation room playlist from home. At nighttime, the stars were just incredible when you weren't staring at your course over ground.
Did you see anything moving among the stars?
A lot of shooting stars, no UFOs. Just the realization and the awareness of how insignificant you are physically, coupled with how significant you are energetically connected to it. Phenomenal paradox that you surrendered into. And that just felt like you were protected. It felt like you were looked after. It felt like you were meant to be there. Yeah, it was every emotion you could probably think of.
One of the most profound things that I saw was time to align your actions with your goals. And you use the example, if you want to be super fit and you like pizza, there's a paradox there and you got to make a decision. And you hit me square in the nose with that one. Share that lesson with us.
It's what my good friend Rory Kilmartin would call the presentation principle. Yeah, and that is that whatever is inconsistent with the greatest version of yourself will present itself. If you want to have your own business, but you don't like getting up early in the morning and handling uncertainty, that's going to present itself. If you want to win the gold medal and you like chocolate brownies, that's going to present itself. So everything inconsistent with who you need to become, by definition, will present itself to you so that you have the opportunity to transcend that, or say, well, I guess I'm not getting the medal. I guess I'm not running a successful business, or I guess I'm just going to settle for where I currently am. Yeah, there is what I call the rumble strip phenomena. If you drive down the freeway, on either side of that freeway, there's the rumble strip. We're familiar with that. And it's there if you're dozing off because you've been 2 hours on, 2 hours off.
Yeah.
Easy done. You're going to hit brrr, and then as a result of that, it should wake you up so you don't go off the verge or through the central reservation and have a bad day. It's the same in life. If you are going through life and you are not paying attention to the feedback, it will escalate. Yeah, you've been a little bit too much on McDonald's and not enough on salad. Your first little bit of feedback is going to be, you're starting to get tight on the pants. You're starting to get a little more out of breath walking up the stairs. If you ignore that, the feedback gets louder. You got to hit the rumble strip. Now, what most people do, they're driving down the freeway of their life and they're listening to their music, and then all of a sudden they hit the rumble strip. That's interfering with their music. That's interfering with my love of pizza.
Yeah.
So what do? They turn up the music. They go to the doctor and ask for a pill, right? They justify, they make an excuse, whatever. Life is going to give you escalating levels of feedback if you don't listen. Because the travesty of humanity, I believe, certainly in modern day society, because our ancestors never had this opportunity to choose. We've been conditioned to think we live in a comfort-centric system,
Right.
a comfort-centric experience. Why? Because we now have access to more comfort than our ancestors ever dreamed of. And if we associate at a lower level of vibration to our physicality, a nervous system that is designed by definition to seek comfort, it's going to give me feedback so that I'm avoiding discomfort physically rather than go for comfort. Now, that's our nervous system, which is hardwired to our physicality, which is linked to our, let's call it, physical experience. But who you and I are, as you well know, is not the physical part of us. It's the non-physical. What makes Ed and Pete is non-physical.
Which ties into what you said about death. It's just a transformation. It's not an end.
You're going to finish this movie, go pick up another script.
Right.
Daniel Craig doesn't die when James Bond dies, right? That's
right.
That's not the game. If you're identified with your body, as most people are through conditioning of materialism, they are going to seek naturally a more comfort-centric experience, which is not in alignment with their soul's expression, which is linked to a growth centric experience. We're here to learn how to grow and contribute.
And growing means being uncomfortable. It means being frustrated. It means being confused.
100%. And how does the body grow in the gym? Yeah. Not through lying on a sofa eating popcorn, watching Netflix, right? It's like, it doesn't.
I learned that. Yes.
Yeah. Right. You realize that you are going to try to engineer a comfort-centric experience. Life is going to give you consistent feedback that that's not why you are here. The purpose of school is not to be happy. We know that. It doesn't mean to say that you can't be happy during school, but it's not why it was designed. It was designed to provide an environment, and again, we're not getting into the indoctrination aspect of education. Let's just use this as a metaphor. It's designed, in most people's levels of understanding, as an environment that allow you to make choices that will lead to an outcome that can support a direction of travel for you being in a career or not. So you can choose to show up to class, study, and whether this is for a musical instrument or pilot training or whatever, or you can choose not to. You can choose to play hooky, you can choose to not care, get partying, get drunk and stoned every night. Those two levels of choices are going to likely lead to two different levels of outcome. The environment is the environment. The environment here is the environment. You can choose to raise your standards, to grow, to seek discomfort so you can expand your comfort zone and become a better version of yourself. Or you can choose to cave in on that and try to just make choices that lead to easiest levels of life, which life is then going to give you feedback that ain't why you're here.
Right. Right. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant stuff. Last question. How tempted were you in this 50-day row to quit, to call in and say, enough is enough, send the rescue team, this is harder than I ever thought?
Of course, there are thoughts like that because your mind is always going to justify how you feel. And there's a lot of peaks, a lot of troughs. The troughs were deep. There were times I just literally got off shift, I called Natty and I burst into tears. I know I don't have a choice. I am questioning everything about why I'm here. And if I didn't have the tools, if I didn't have the experience of using those tools, think of the hardest physical, mental, emotional challenge you could ever think of, and then just times it by a really big number, I knew at those times they were opportunities to find out who I was. I would feel down for a certain amount of time, and then I would say, okay, what tool am I using now? What can I be grateful for in this moment? This is why I came. This is the moment that I've been looking for to find out where I'm at on my own totem pole. Don't quit now, Pete. You've got this. This will pass at some point. And I know that my biggest strength in not quitting didn't come from a wanting to finish. It didn't come from a trying to prove that I'd still got what it takes. My biggest strength in not quitting came from the messages of support, the inspiration I was hopefully giving other people, the thousands of people that were following along, the hundreds of messages of love and all of that. That's where the strength came from to say, no, whatever it takes, I'm still in the game.
Wonderful, wonderful sharing. Pete, thank you for this interview, for sharing. We have the wonderful Peter Sage, author of The Inside Track. Are you going to write another book?
I'm sure there'll be something that comes out at some point. Right now, I'm still trying to get my legs under me and put my 10 kilos on that I lost.
We have witnessed and heard, and I don't know about you, but I have personally been moved dramatically by what he has shared. And it's made my own little problems, whether they be a pebble in the shoe or other issues, seem really small, which I want to thank you for. And I'm sure there are many millions who also feel the same way. Folks, thanks for watching. Peter, thank you so much for an incredible interview.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to share this close to the end of the event. Yeah, it's the first day without the beard, to be fair.
Right.
If I can have gone through something like that and it helps inspire somebody else to help deal with their row, then every stroke was worth it.
I have no doubt it will be. Thank you again, Peter. Thank you, folks.